Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello friends, welcome to Chaitanya Studio at Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University at Ahmedabad. Myself, Dr. Vinodal Desai, working at Department of Computer Science and Technology, Sardar Patel University, Vallabh Vidyanagar. In today's sessions, we are going to talk about the selectors used in a CSS. Okay, the CSS is useless, ineffective if the selectors are removed from that. That means the power of selectors is there in a CSS. So CSS selectors are simply, if you have to define, then CSS selectors are simply the elements of the HTML documents on which we will provide different kinds of effects through the CSS properties or rule set, we can say. Selectors are the part of CSS rule set. CSS selectors select HTML elements according to its ID, class, type, attribute, etc. There are different types of selectors available in CSS. Among that, one is the element selector, second one is ID selector, third one is class selector, fourth one is universal selector, and fifth one is group selectors. So let's have a look at each. First one is element selectors. So what the element selector is, so simply it is specifying the each and every individual elements of an HTML documents on which we can provide a CSS effect. Suppose we have HTML documents as specified, okay, and we have the we can say elements in terms of paragraph, okay, only in the body sections. Now on the paragraph sections, if you want to provide the effect of our CSS, then we can use the element selectors by just simply specifying P in a script tag as specified and displayed over here. Okay, let's have practical so that we can understand this in a more better way. Let me to open it. These all are, we can say, selectors that we are going to discuss in this session. First of all, let me to say element selectors, this one. Okay, so here we are, you can see that we have only in a body section we have one paragraph, another paragraph, and third paragraph. Total 3 paragraphs is there. Okay, so first paragraph contains only the message, second paragraph is having an ID, and third paragraph is also having a content. Now what we want to do is, we simply want to provide the effect of font, color, background color or image and background color, okay, on a paragraph tag. So paragraph tag is simply a paragraph element in our HTML document. So if you want to provide a effect of CSS on the paragraph, then we will simply put a style tag. Generally for the practical sessions throughout this CSS discussion, we will use a internal CSS, okay, simply by style tag, and we will provide all the styles within the style tag. So this P is nothing but the element selector. This is known as element selector, okay, we have used because it's an element of a HTML documents, and whatever paragraphs are contained within the HTML document, on all the paragraphs this is going to be applicable. This is going to be applicable. These effects will be applicable. Now let's have a look at this paragraph, or we can say element selector effect. We have total 3 paragraphs. So all the 3 paragraphs will have the same effect, okay, as mentioned in the styling style tag. See here. So this is known as element selector, the first one. Moving next is ID selectors. So the ID selector selects the ID attribute of an HTML element to select a specific element. Okay, so whenever we are defining any HTML element, we will provide ID attribute of that element. And if you want to have a styling mechanism on that element, then we will select the ID of that element, and then after we will provide the CSS effect on it. An ID is always unique within the page. So it is chosen to select a single unique element. Okay, ID will be a unique. There will not be two ID with a common name. It is written with the hash character. So to identify whether it is a ID, then we or any other, then we can use hash sign, okay, before this element, followed by the ID of the element, okay. Let us have a look. So suppose here we have a paragraph with an ID attribute, and the value of this ID is DCS. So to provide the effect on this paragraph, we will identify this paragraph using its ID as it is unique. So simply what we will do, we will use hash sign before the value of this ID, that is DCS. So hash DCS will identify that it is a paragraph having the ID DCS, okay, and upon that whatever we can say style property we have used, that will be applied on that. Let's have a look practically, okay. ID selector is over here. So here what we have chosen is, we have a division section, it's having a ID, that is CSS section. Sardar Patel University is the content of a division. Another division is there, Department of Computer Science, okay. So there are two division tags, one is without ID and one with ID. And now in a style tag we are providing the effect of for the division having a ID CSS section. See, we are using this syntax to bifurcate the divisions, okay. So division with a ID CSS section upon which this effect is going to be applied. That means border will be drawn with a 1 pixel dotted in a red color, and padding would be 40 pixels. Let's run it so that we can understand how the ID selector works. As you can see, Sardar Patel University is in a division with a dotted line, and Department of Computer Science in other division content. But on the second division, the effect is not applied because it is not having any kind of ID, okay. It is simply a division, nothing else. See here, the CSS effect is applied only on the matched division having a ID CSS sections, and it is only on this Sardar Patel University, not anywhere else across the HTML documents. So this is what the ID selectors is. If you have multiple, we can say, paragraphs, multiple divisions, and if you want to provide a different mechanisms to each divisions, then you should specify the ID to each division in a unique manner, and then after provide the required CSS effect to each paragraph or division element. The next selector is class selector. The class selector selects HTML element with a specified class attribute. Same as ID, we have to provide a class attribute, but the difference is that ID will be identified using the hash sign, while the class attribute will be identified using the period operator, or we can say dot operators. Okay, as you can see in the slides that there is a paragraph in a body section having a class attribute with a value center. So in a style sections we have used dot with a class value center. So this indicates that it's a class attribute, not a ID attribute, okay. So this way we can bifurcate that particular selectors is a ID selector or a class selectors. If it is associated with a hash, then we can say it's ID selectors. If it is associated with a dot, then we can say it's a class selectors. Let's have a look practically. Class selectors. Yes. So here we have a one header having a class center, another paragraph having a class center. As you can see, class may have same value. That means uniqueness is not required in a class, while in a ID selector uniqueness is required. So each ID would be unique in a whole document, while class may have a same value. So how do we differentiate them? So by associating the element of that particular class, okay. So here first one, see, we have associated the center class value with a h1. as its element. So h1 dot center is there, while for the paragraph we have used p dot center. Okay, and then after whatever effects we want to provide on a particular paragraph or header, we can provide it. As alignment is there, color is there, let's have a test. Just execute it and test it. Class selectors. As we can see that this is one and this is another one. On both we have used class selector mechanism. Moving next is a for specific element. Okay, as we already discussed by associating with a element. Okay, the difference between class and ID selectors, as we already discussed, the ID is used for single element that appears on the page for only once, header, footer, menu, like that. Whereas class is used for single or multiple elements that appear on the page for once or more than once, paragraphs, links, button, input boxes, etc. While you can also use a class for a single element in order to get used to this distinction and use these separators as they are intended. It is better to make a habit of using classes to control the style of multiple of the same type of elements. An HTML element can have both an ID and a class. ID would be unique one, while class doesn't require any uniqueness. The next selectors is a universal selector. Universal indicates that means global. Okay, so if you want to have a requirement that such kind of mechanism or the particular kind of CSS effect should be applicable to whole document, then you can provide it using a universal selectors, and that will be identified using a star. As you can see in this screen, that star is used for the particular kind of CSS effect on all the tags or the contents of the HTML documents. Let's have a practical look. Universal selector. We have a universal selectors. Let's have a look at that. I don't have that open file, so let me to open universal selectors. How we have written it, that we'll see. Simply a star is there and it will be applicable to H1 and P, whatever elements is contained within the body tag on which the universal selectors will be applied. A green effect for color and then after font size would be 20 pixels, that we can see. Okay, on this. So this is what the universal selector says. Moving next is a group selectors. So grouping selector is used to select all the elements with the same style definition. Grouping selector is used to minimize the code. Commas are used to separate the selectors in grouping. So suppose if you are having number of selectors, a number of elements and which requiring the same kind of CSS effect. So instead of writing each selectors with the common styling effect separately, what we can do is we can just group those elements which require same CSS effect by separating them with a comma and provide a single time CSS effect as shown over here, as H1, H2 and paragraph requires the same kind of CSS effect. So instead of writing 3 times the same kind of mechanism repeatedly, we can write single times by just grouping all those elements. So it reduces the number code as well as the complexity while we need to update it. Okay, so let's have a look in a practical manner. Group selectors, this one. The same thing is there, H1, H2 and P. Okay, let's have a execution. Group selectors, same effect would be there. Okay, Department of Competence, Sadapati University, Anand. Okay, they all requires common kind of effect. So we can use it in terms of group selectors. Now moving next these are child selectors. So what is child selectors? The name indicates it is a, we can say, child of another tag, another element. There would be a parent, then and then the child selectors would be there. So child selector provides a way to select elements that fall within one another, thus making them children of their parent element. These selections can be made in two different ways. One is descendant selector and another is direct child selector. So what is descendant selector? So the most common child selector is the descendant selector, which matches every element that follows an identified ancestors. That means the descendant element doesn't have to come directly after the ancestor element inside the documentary, such as parent-child relationship, but fall anywhere within the ancestor element. Descendant selectors are created by spacing apart elements within a selector, creating a new level of hierarchy for each element list. Okay. So how do we write descendant selectors? So see, here the syntax is given article space h2, and then after the CSS effect we will provide in a curly braces. So what does it mean? That there should be, we can say, a child h2 within the article, as the article would be the parent tag or element, within that there should be a h2, and if it is available then the provided CSS effects would be applicable to that h2 element. But the rules is it must be descendant. Okay, it must be descendant. That means it should be a, we can say, child of the ancestor, we can say, element. Let's have a practically look. Descendant selectors. Oh, it is already opened. So we will open it. Descendant selectors. Okay. So simply h2. So where the h2 is within the body. Then after in article tag we have two h2. h2 direct h2 is there, and another h2 is within the division tag. Okay. So let's run it and see where or what kind of effect the descendant selectors provides, and through that we will be in a positions to know. So see here on a first h2 it is not applicable because it was not a part of the article tag, while the rest two were the part of the article. Okay, irrespective of their parent it is applicable. So this is what the descendant selectors is, as this h2 is a direct part of article while this h2 is a part of division, but ultimately division is a part of article. So this CSS effect is applicable to both the h2 in a descendant selector, in a descendant selectors. So descendant selectors syntax is simply the ancestor element and then after space and then after the element on which you want to apply the CSS effect. Moving next is a direct child selectors. So sometimes descendant selectors go a bit overboard, selecting more than hoped. At times only the direct children of a parent element need to be selected. Not every instance of the element nested deeply inside of an ancestors. In this event, the direct child selectors may be used by placing a greater than sign, okay, between the parent element and child element within the selector. So in the descendant selectors we were using space, while in the direct child selections we will use a greater than sign. Here see article greater than p. This indicates that the p must be the direct element of direct child of article. Okay. So let's have a understanding through a practical one, a direct child. Again we have just changed it from space to greater than sign for the direct child p of a articles. Okay. Now the same content is there, same program is there, and we will just try to run it. So you can see that the only direct child was this second h2, okay, which was direct child of the article tag, that is a parent one. So the CSS effect will be only applicable to the first h2, which is what, and paragraph here, paragraph of article, okay, which is a direct child of article. So the effect will be only this paragraph, not another one if it is somewhere within the division tags. This effect will not be applicable to the other paragraphs. So this is what all about a direct child selectors. Moving next, sibling selectors. These sibling selectors, knowing how to select the children of an element is largely beneficial and quite commonly seen. Sibling elements are those elements that share a common parent, may also need to be selected. These sibling selections can be made by two ways. General sibling selectors, which allows elements to be selected based on their sibling elements, those which share the same common parent. A general one. They are created by using the tilde characters between two elements within a selectors. H2 tilde P as syntax is shown. So what does it mean? That means they both must share a common parent. Okay. On all those tags the CSS effect will be applicable. Let's have a practical one so that we can understand in a more better way. Okay, so here H2 tilde sign is and P is there, so on which we can say H2 and P tag the defect would be applicable, that we'll see. As you can see, this is what sibling selectors, our file was sibling selectors, yes. So the effect was applicable to the paragraph H2 and P, that means as you can see the effect was only applicable to you are in the state of Asiatic Alliance and established by Mahatma Gandhi in 2020. You are in the state of Asiatic Alliance, okay, and another one is established by Mahatma Gandhi. That means why these two paragraphs only? Because these two paragraphs shares common parent, okay, both. While this paragraph is a part of, or it is having a parent division, so this paragraph is not a part of this, we can say section, or we can say H2 tag, okay, because H2 we have used not sections, we have used H2, okay. So the paragraph which shares a common parent, okay, so this P, this 2P, one is this and second one is this, both shares a common parent in the form of H2, okay. So we can say that this is going to happen and the provided CSS effect will be applicable to only these two paragraphs. Moving next to general siblings, there is a adjacent sibling selectors. Occasionally a little more control may be desired, including the ability to select a sibling element that directly follows after another sibling element, which is where the adjacent sibling element comes in. The adjacent sibling selectors will only select the sibling elements directly following after another sibling elements. Instead of using the tilde characters as with general sibling selectors, the adjacent sibling selectors will use a plus character between the two elements within a selectors. Okay, so it will look like this, H2 plus P. So looking at the adjacent sibling selector H2 plus P, only P elements directly following after the H2 elements will be selected, okay, both of which must also share the same parent elements. The paragraph on line 4 is selected, okay, only as it is directly following after its sibling heading element and shares common parent, that is section. Let's see. Okay, we can directly change even here to understand this in a more better way. We will just put a plus and we will reflect the refresh, as you can see now, okay, just one paragraph is getting affected while the rest remains unchanged. So H2 Ahmedabad is there and then after paragraph P is there. So it is directly adjacent and sibling and they both shares the common parent in terms of sections. So only that P is going to be selected, while another P, Gujarat, is a part of division tag, and then after India paragraph is there, but it's also not directly, we can say direct sibling to the H2. So only the fourth one, this paragraph will be selected, is going to be, we can say, provided a CSS effect. So this is adjacent sibling, child selectors or adjacent sibling. Then after we have various kinds of attribute selectors. Okay, in a HTML documents we have various tags and having various attributes. So through selectors we can have different kinds of CSS effects. Attribute selectors are case sensitive and are written inside brackets. What goes between the attribute name and equal sign is what makes the difference among the selectors. There are 7 different types of matches you can find with an attribute selectors, and the syntax is different for each. Okay, now we can say a bracket, we have to provide a data value. Okay, the attribute exists. Simply if you will provide an attribute name, that means it indicates attribute exists, and if you will provide equal to and then value, then it must match with the specified values. If you will provide a data along with star equal to and then after the value, that means it indicates the attribute value contains this value somewhere in it. Okay, star indicates that the BAOU must be existing in somewhere in the, we can say, content. Then a tilde sign, equal to tilde sign with along with the value, this indicates that this attribute has this value in a space separated lists somewhere. Caret sign is used to indicate that the value starts with a particular specified value. Okay, that means the value will start with a BAOU only. If we are specifying a vertical sign, or we can say a pipe sign, that indicates the attribute value starts with this in a dash separated value. Okay, dash separated value. If dollar sign is used along with this value, then it indicates that attribute value ends with that particular specified value. So by using the attribute selectors, we can filter out various, we can say, elements and content from the HTML, and we can highlight it as and when required. Thank you, friends. In this session, we have learnt about selectors, its usage and its importance. We have discussed various kinds of selectors in the form of ID selectors, class selectors, element selectors, group selectors, and universal selectors. Then after we have discussed about child selectors, in which also falls in a descendant selectors, descendant child selectors, direct child selectors, and adjacent child selectors. We also discussed the attribute selectors associated with different while characters like star, caret sign, dollar sign, okay, pipe sign, etc. So selectors are playing a vital role in a CSS, which is used in HTMLs to extract and highlight the important content in a web page. Thank you very much.